In a small, tight-knit neighborhood just outside a bustling American city, a legend was born. This was not the kind of legend that filled stadiums or graced magazine covers, but one that lived quietly among the people, a symbol of strength, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a man and his community. Raymond Ray Carter was a decorated Black Vietnam War veteran, a man who had seen the worst humanity had to offer, but also experienced the best. In his youth, he had enlisted with a sense of duty, proud to serve his country despite knowing the burdens his race would bring in uniform. After returning home, the world seemed different. The war had taken its toll, but so had the battles fought back on American soil. The post-traumatic stress was heavy, but what truly weighed on Ray was the division between him and the people who had once been his comrades. As the years went by, Ray returned to his roots in the community he grew up in. The neighborhood was far from perfect, surrounded by social unrest and simmering tension. The local police force, predominantly white, had a reputation for aggression and an unspoken disdain for the Black residents, often pushing the boundaries of their authority. But Ray wasn't like other veterans who had become jaded or distant from their communities. No, he stayed. He became a protector, a pillar in the community. The older folks who lived in the area respected him. Young kids looked up to him. And the families knew that as long as Ray was around, no harm would come to them. However, there was one thing that set Ray apart: the tattoo on his forearm. It wasn't a tattoo from a typical veterans club, nor was it a military insignia. It was a tattoo of a broken chain, wrapped in a snake, a symbol of both his personal struggle and his commitment to fight for the freedom and dignity of his people. The tattoo was a tribute to the years spent in the war, but it also symbolized the chains of racial oppression he had fought against, both abroad and at home. One summer evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Ray stood on the corner of his block, greeting the families as they returned home from work. He noticed the patrol car slowing down as it passed by. It was a new officer, one Ray hadn't seen before. The officer slowed to a stop, rolling down his window as he eyed the tattoo on Ray's forearm. "Hey, you got something there?" the officer said, pointing to the ink. Ray stared at him, trying to gauge his intent. The officer's gaze softened, but Ray could see the confusion, the internal struggle in his eyes. "That's my story," Ray said quietly, flexing his arm slightly to make sure the officer saw the full design. "It's a story of survival, brother. A story of not breaking under pressure, whether in a war or here at home." The officer, visibly shaken, shifted in his seat, his face turning a shade of red. He glanced back at his partner in the car, who was looking intently at Ray now, his eyes wide. I didn't realize," the first officer stammered. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean, it's just, that's powerful." Ray, sensing the change in the officer's demeanor, leaned in slightly, speaking with quiet conviction. "We all carry scars, son. Yours just aren't visible yet. But don't let them harden you. You got a chance to make a real difference." The officer nodded slowly, then hesitated. "I used to be a part of the problem, you know? I joined this force because I wanted to protect people, but it's hard not to get caught up in what the others do. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice." Ray didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Instead, he stood up straighter, his gaze steady. After a moment of silence, the officer muttered a quiet thank you before rolling up his window and driving away. The following weeks saw subtle changes. The officer returned, this time with a newfound respect. More and more, Ray's tattoo became a symbol not just of personal history, but of change. Word spread among the local force, and the officers who once treated the community with contempt began questioning their own actions. Conversations were had, apologies were made. Some even started to see Ray for what he truly was, not just a Black veteran, but a man who carried wisdom, who had fought not just for his country, but for the soul of the nation itself. The story of Ray Carter spread through the city like wildfire. What had begun as a simple act of kindness, a passing comment on a tattoo, became a turning point for an entire precinct. As the officers learned from Ray, they began to protect and serve with a sense of honor and duty that they had never known before. Ray's story didn't stop there. His tattoo, once a symbol of battle, now became a reminder that even in the darkest times, people could change, evolve, and choose to fight for justice, not just with fists or weapons, but with empathy and understanding. By the end of that summer, Ray Carter was no longer just a veteran in his community. He was the guardian, the living reminder of the battles fought, the wounds healed, and the unbreakable bond between a man and the people he vowed to protect. And in his heart, he knew the chains had finally broken, not just for him, but for everyone.